Cradle of Lies. Today's story is about a couple, Kate and Alex, whose dream of starting a family turned into something much darker. In my line of work, I've seen how fragile trust can be, especially when we're most vulnerable. What starts with hope can quickly spiral into a nightmare. Join me as we unravel their emotional journey and the unsettling truth behind it. From the outside, Kate and Alex had everything. Their life seemed just perfect. It was the kind of house people drive by and wonder, who lives inside? Red brick, ivy climbing up the side, and those large bay windows that welcomed sunlight. It was the house Kate and Alex had pictured for themselves for years, long before they moved in. But inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. Kate sat on the porch, her mind wandering as the sun cast a golden hue over the garden she adored. She glanced back at the house, their house, the one they had spent years renovating. Alex had designed the garden. It was their little escape, where they could enjoy a glass of wine and a good book after long days. Everything seemed perfect. Their careers, Kate as a lawyer, Alex as a self-made accountant, had taken off. They were financially secure. Their weekends, filled with laughter, good food and travel plans, surrounded by close friends and a tight-knit community. Life, as they knew it, was as picture-perfect as anyone could imagine. But beneath the surface, something lingered. There was a hollow space in the home they loved, an empty room that should have been filled by now. Kate felt a familiar pang as she traced her hand over her stomach. They had everything, except the one thing they truly wanted. It started innocently enough. They assumed, like most couples, that once they were ready for a baby, it would happen. But after months of trying, months of waiting, they found themselves sitting in a sterile doctor's office, hearing words that would change everything. "It's not impossible," the doctor said, his voice clinical, "just difficult." That word, difficult, stuck with Kate for weeks. The first year, it was filled with optimism. They tried everything, timing, vitamins, acupuncture, but nothing worked. Slowly, hope began to slip away, replaced by anxiety. Each month felt like a countdown to another failure. Alex, always the optimist, tried to stay positive, but Kate could see the worry in his eyes, the worry he tried so hard to hide. He'd crack jokes, pretending it didn't hurt as much as it did. But soon, the laughter faded, and the silences grew longer. The treatments became routine, the jokes fewer. Kate noticed how Alex's shoulders tensed when yet another test came back negative. She noticed the long silences at night when neither of them knew what to say. Finally conceived, it felt like a miracle. They were giddy with relief. Kate remembered Alex picking her up and spinning her around, laughing like a child. For a moment, it felt like everything had been worth it. But that joy, it was short-lived. A routine checkup turned into something much more serious. And then, nothing. The loss came silently. There wasn't even a warning. One moment, Kate was filled with hope, and the next, nothing. She sat in that hospital bed, staring at the empty space in front of her, feeling hollow. Kate took months off work, unable to function. Alex was at her side the whole time, but he struggled too. After a few weeks, he returned to work, throwing himself into clients and numbers, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. Kate could see the cracks forming. They drifted apart, not on purpose, but because neither of them knew how to handle the grief. They both wanted that baby so badly, but they never really talked about it. It was easier not to. Kate didn't know how to explain the emptiness she felt every single day, and Alex, he didn't know how to fix something that felt so utterly broken. It was Kate who first suggested a surrogate. The idea felt heavy on her tongue, but it had been growing in her mind since the loss. They could still have a child, couldn't they? If her body couldn't carry one, someone else could. But, like everything during the pandemic, even this was complicated. They started reaching out to agencies, setting up video calls with potential surrogates. It was awkward at first, trying to make a connection through a screen, asking deeply personal questions, all while pretending everything was normal. Kate's depression worsened. Some days, even getting out of bed felt impossible. Alex tried to be supportive, but he was struggling too. The pressure of finding the right person and the fear of making the wrong decision weighed on both of them. The Zoom calls? They didn't help. Technical glitches, awkward silences, and conversations that led nowhere. There was one woman whose Wi-Fi kept cutting out, leaving Kate and Alex staring blankly at a frozen screen. They laughed at the absurdity of it all, but beneath the humor was deep exhaustion. This was their future, and it felt like no one could understand just how much was riding on this decision. Then, out of the blue, came a message from a young woman named Lily. Kate wanted to believe it was fate. Lily had heard from a neighbor about their situation. "I don't mean to be forward," she wrote, "but I was so moved by your story and wanted to help." Kate and Alex stared at each other. They were hesitant. They didn't know Lily. She had only recently moved to the area, and it felt too good to be true. But after weeks of dead-end conversations, Kate was desperate, and Alex, seeing the light come back into Kate's eyes, agreed to meet her. Lily was lovely. She met them at their home, exuding an aura of calmness. From the moment she walked through the door, things just felt right. She was polite, well-spoken, and genuinely seemed to care. There was a warmth about her that made Kate feel comfortable, like maybe this could work. They sat in the living room, sipping tea and making polite conversation. Alex had been cautious at first, asking all the right questions, but even he couldn't help but be charmed by Lily's sincerity. She seemed perfect. Normally, they would have done a thorough background check. In fact, that's how we first met Kate and Alex. They came to us for help, trusting our investigation company to run checks on their previous surrogate candidates. We'd sift through every detail, financial backgrounds, social media history, ensuring they were making the right choice. But Lily? She was different. They were tired, physically and emotionally. The weight of everything, the treatments, the loss, the endless search for the perfect surrogate, had drained them. They didn't want to hear about one more candidate who wasn't right. They needed this to be different. Kate was desperate to believe it. The moment Lily stepped into their lives, she seemed to bring hope with her. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she carried herself, that made them want to trust her. And Alex, cautious by nature, found himself swept up in that hope too. They mentioned their usual process, the background checks we would typically run. But this time, they hesitated. Alex suggested, maybe we should get Kirk's team involved again, just to be sure. But Kate, her voice laced with exhaustion, replied, "Do we really need to? She's perfect. I don't want to go through it all again." So, they didn't. No deep dives, no scrutinizing every detail. They chose to trust Lily, without our usual checks. It was a leap of faith, one they needed to take. That leap, it would soon reveal itself to be a mistake, one they couldn't take back. Lily was a single mum, which somehow made Kate and Alex trust her even more. She knew what it was like to love a child, to care for someone so completely. It felt reassuring. Yet, strangely, they never met her little boy. Lily always had an excuse for why she couldn't bring him to their meetings. At first, it made sense. Meetings at their home were close and private. Why disrupt that? But something about it lingered in the back of Alex's mind. "It's fine," Kate said one evening when Alex voiced his concern. "She's just trying to keep things simple. We're lucky to have her, remember?" So, Alex let it go. After all, Lily had been nothing short of perfect. Besides, they were already too deep in. The doctor's visits, the scans, it was all moving forward so quickly. For the first time in what felt like forever, Kate was happy. Alex could see it in the way she moved around the kitchen, humming to herself as she stirred pasta on the stove, or how she would randomly twirl around the living room like they were back in their dating days. He loved this woman dearly, and seeing her joy return filled him with hope. For months, Alex had woken up in the dead of night, glancing over to see Kate still asleep, only to lie there, staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning with 1,000 what-ifs. But now, for the first time, he felt calm, like they were finally on the right path. Maybe this was it. Maybe they were finally getting their happy ending. And then it happened. Lily was pregnant. They sat in the sterile, cold room, holding hands as the doctor moved the scanner over Lily's belly. It felt like time had stopped when they saw that tiny little speck on the monitor. A tiny speck that was theirs. Theirs. Lily met Alex's eyes and smiled. Kate squeezed Alex's hand, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For the first time in a long time, they felt like a family. Not just two people with a dream, but three, two soon-to-be parents. From that moment on, they couldn't do enough for Lily. She never asked for much, but that only made Kate and Alex want to give her more. They bought her a car, something reliable to get her to appointments and wherever else she needed. They paid for private medical care, insisting that she shouldn't worry about a thing. They bought her the best maternity clothes, the kind that made her look like she'd stepped out of a magazine. They made sure she had anything she needed: organic food, vitamins, a personal trainer for prenatal exercises, even paying for a new home for Lily and her son to keep her safe during the pregnancy and for as long after as she liked. Lily had everything she needed, including an open invitation to stay with them when nights got tough. "It's the least we can do," Kate would say. "She's giving us our baby." Alex agreed. They couldn't give her enough. Lily was giving them the one thing they couldn't give themselves. The weeks passed, and soon they found themselves standing in another sterile room, waiting to hear whether the tiny speck was a boy or a girl. But honestly, they didn't care either way. A healthy baby, that's all that mattered. The doctor had barely begun moving the ultrasound probe when Lily, with a strange certainty in her voice, said, "We're going to have a son." Kate froze. Her breath caught in her throat as she glanced at Alex. They both knew it. The baby wasn't meant to be Lily's. So why would she say we? Alex's grip tightened around Kate's hand. The doctor, unaware of the shift in the room, smiled and nodded. "Well, yes," she confirmed. "It does look like a boy." Kate forced a smile, but her mind raced. It was their baby, not Lily's. So why did it sound like Lily was already claiming him as her own? The words hung in the air, unsettling them both. Kate felt her heart quicken, a flicker of doubt creeping into the moment that should have been filled with joy. Alex stayed silent, but his thumb rubbed nervously over the back of Kate's hand. She knew they were both thinking the same thing. Why did she say that? This baby wasn't meant to be hers. As they left the clinic, Kate couldn't shake the feeling of unease that Lily's words had stirred. The excitement they had both felt minutes earlier was now tinged with doubt. "We're going to have a son," echoed in their minds, raising questions neither of them dared to speak out loud. It started slowly. Small things at first. Lily missing appointments, showing up late to scans, making strange excuses. Kate brushed it off, telling herself that everything was fine. Lily had a life of her own, after all. But Alex, he wasn't so sure. There was that one time Lily had turned up at their home unexpectedly, long after they'd finished their planned visit for the day. She stood on the doorstep, her eyes wide and frantic, claiming she'd forgotten something. Of course, Kate let her in. After all, she was carrying their baby. But it was strange. Lily wandered through the house, touching things that weren't hers, running her fingers along the nursery door frame as if she had some right to it. She stayed longer than was comfortable, speaking about the baby as though she were the one preparing for motherhood. "I'm going to be the best Lily stuttered, catching herself. Kate froze, unsure of how to respond. Was she going to say Mom? It was just a slip of the tongue, Kate told herself, but the unease gnawed at her. Alex noticed it too, the little oddities that didn't sit right, the way Lily would sometimes refer to the baby as her son, the late-night messages, nothing outright threatening, but just odd. He tried to bring it up to Kate a few times, but she didn't want to hear it. But soon, it wasn't just messages about the baby. Lily began texting Alex about other things. She would send late-night texts asking for his advice or sharing personal stories, painting herself as a vulnerable single mother who just needed someone to talk to. Kate occasionally caught Alex reading these messages with a puzzled look on his face, but he didn't mention them much. Lily's behavior grew stranger. She would show up at their house unannounced, asking for Alex specifically, making excuses like she'd forgotten something or needed advice on a matter only Alex could help with. Kate began to feel the tension. She didn't want to say anything, not wanting to seem paranoid, but Alex could sense her unease. Still, neither of them could have predicted what came next. April 18th, the day of the scheduled C-section. It was a date they had marked on their calendar for months, a day that was supposed to change everything. But that morning, there was silence. No text, no call, just nothing. Kate was pacing the house, her hands shaking as she tried to dial Lily's number again. No answer. Alex, always the more level-headed of the two, grabbed the keys, telling her they should head to the hospital. Maybe Lily was already there. Maybe things were fine. They were halfway to the hospital when Kate's phone buzzed. She glanced down and saw a text from an unknown number. Her heart stopped. Her world imploded around her, her eyes locked on the screen as tears forced their way out. The baby didn't make it. Her blood ran cold. Just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. It costs nothing, but it really helps us out and shows that you're enjoying the content. Your support keeps us going, so thanks for listening. And now, back to the story. Alex pulled the car over, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Kate was silent. Tears streamed down her face. How could this have happened? But something wasn't right. The message didn't sound like Lily. And why was it from an unknown number? Alex's instincts kicked in. He dialed the hospital. The voice on the other end sounded confused when he asked about Lily and the baby. Mum and baby are fine. They were discharged hours ago. Kate felt like the air had been sucked out of the car. Discharged? They had left? How? Why? It didn't make sense. The baby was theirs, physically and legally. How could she have just taken him? They didn't understand it, but they were going to find out. That's when I got the call. Alex's voice, usually so composed, was barely recognizable. There was an edge to it, a desperation I hadn't heard from him before. When I arrived at their home, everything on the outside seemed untouched by the chaos that had descended on their lives. The lawn was immaculately kept, and the large windows reflected the golden light of the late afternoon sun. There was a stillness, the kind that only follows heartbreak. Alex met me at the door, his face pale and strained. He didn't say much, just a few words that barely managed to escape his lips. She's gone. She took him. I followed Alex up the stairs. Kate sat on the nursery floor, her eyes hollow from hours of crying. Alex paused, hesitating at the doorway, as if stepping into that room might make it all too real. The nursery was perfect. Every detail had been painstakingly planned. The walls were painted in a soft, serene blue, warm and calming. It wasn't just any blue, it was chosen carefully, the kind that reminded you of peaceful days. The crib stood in the center of the room, framed by delicate white curtains that flowed softly in the breeze from a partially open window. The crib was pristine, fitted with hand-picked bedding and a knitted blanket hanging over the edge, a lovely soft blue with tiny white clouds embroidered along the edges. On the headboard, a small mobile with stars and moons slowly spun, its gentle motion almost haunting in the stillness of the room. The whole room smelled faintly of lavender and baby powder. It was ready for a baby that would never come home. Kate sat on the floor, her eyes drifting over the room as if she was seeing it for the first time. "We were so close," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Everything was ready." My heart ached for them. This room wasn't just a space in their home, it was the future they had dreamed of. A future that had been torn away from them in an instant. I glanced at Alex, who sat down on the edge of the crib, his head hanging low, his hands clenched tightly. He couldn't bring himself to look at the room any longer. The pain was too much. Standing in the nursery, I felt the weight of their pain. I've been in rooms like this before, rooms filled with hope, now drenched in sorrow. It reminded me of a time when I worked with a family who'd lost everything. Sometimes, no matter how professional you are, it's hard not to carry a bit of that grief with you. But I had to keep my emotions in check. Lily had taken their baby, and there had to be a reason. My heart hurt for Kate and Alex, but I needed to find out what had driven her to do this. Something didn't add up, and the answer was out there. I just had to find it. As I began to investigate, the truth became clear. Lily's obsession wasn't about the baby. It was about Alex. She had fallen in love with him, believing that by giving birth to his child, she could take Kate's place in his life. It wasn't money she wanted. It was Alex. Piece by piece, the picture came together. Lily had been manipulating them from the start, weaving her way into their lives, convincing herself that this baby would bring her closer to Alex. She had planned everything. Kate and Alex had trusted her. They had given her everything. And now, Lily had taken something from them that could never be replaced. As I began digging into Lily's life, small details didn't add up. I started by reviewing the messages she had sent Alex, ones Kate hadn't seen. Most of them seemed innocent enough at first, but something was off about the tone. It wasn't just casual texting between surrogate and parents. Lily had started texting Alex late at night under the guise of updating him about the baby, but her messages drifted into more personal topics. She would ask Alex how he was doing, if he was sleeping well, if Kate was treating him right. One message stuck out. "You deserve to be taken care of, Alex. You're such a good man." I felt a knot in my stomach as I read through her words, the way she lingered on how kind he was, how much she appreciated him as more than just the baby's father. It wasn't just the content of the messages, it was the frequency. Lily seemed to message Alex constantly, asking for his advice or input on things that had nothing to do with the baby. Sometimes she'd send photos, harmless ones of her day it seemed at first, but in retrospect, they were more intimate, more like something you'd send to someone you were trying to impress. It was as though she was trying to build a relationship with him outside of the surrogacy. I started going back over Alex's interactions with Lily. She had always wanted to deal with him directly. At doctor's appointments, she'd subtly position herself closer to Alex, asking for his input on things she should have been discussing with Kate. She'd defer to him constantly, as if his opinion mattered more than anyone else's. Kate hadn't noticed it before, but now, as we talked through everything, the picture became clearer. The real breakthrough came when I checked Lily's social media. It was clear that she had been following Alex long before they ever met. Her posts, stretching back months before she offered to be their surrogate, referenced a man who doesn't know how much he means to her. Cryptic messages about finally getting what I deserve, or how sometimes love takes time, but it's worth the wait. Becoming their surrogate wasn't just about carrying their baby. It was about getting closer to him. The pregnancy was her way of cementing a connection, a bond she believed would draw him away from Kate. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I checked Alex's emails on their A draft from Lily he hadn't seen. The contents left no doubt about her feeling. She explained about how she felt Alex was the only person who truly understood her. She talked about how she dreamed of raising their child together, as a family. She referenced how Kate was too distracted by her career and how Alex deserved someone who would be there for him, fully. "You and I could be happy, Alex," she wrote, "raising this baby together. I know you feel it too. We could make this work. I see the way you look at me. We're meant to be more than this." That was the moment it all clicked. Lily wasn't just a surrogate. She believed she was going to take Kate's place. In her mind, Alex was already hers, and the baby was the key to making it all happen. When I showed the messages and social media posts to Kate, she sat there in stunned silence. She had trusted Lily. She had let her into their home, their lives, never imagining that Lily had an entirely different agenda. Alex was equally devastated. He hadn't seen it coming either. But now, the pieces made sense. Lily's obsession with Alex had been building for months, and by taking their baby, she thought she was securing the life she had convinced herself was meant to be. Days passed after the discovery of Lily's obsession, and the search for her intensified. Kate and Alex were left devastated, barely able to function as they waited for news. I knew time was of the essence. The longer Lily had the baby, the more dangerous the situation became. It wasn't easy, but we traced her to a small, isolated house on the outskirts of town. She had rented it under a different name, keeping herself hidden, believing no one would find her. As I pulled up to the house, an uneasy feeling settled over me. It was a quiet street, far from the bustle of the city, the kind of place you could disappear into, but I knew the darkness that lay within. The house stood eerily quiet against the backdrop of a grey sky. The curtains were drawn tightly, blocking out the light. There was something unsettling about the stillness surrounding the place. I approached the door, my heart racing. I knocked, and for a long moment, there was nothing. Just when I thought she wouldn't answer, the door creaked open, revealing Lily's pale face. Her eyes were wild, bloodshot, like someone who hadn't slept in days. Behind the desperation in her gaze, there was something else. Something dangerous. "Who are you?" she hissed, her voice low, barely above a whisper. I could see the tension in her body, her hand gripping the door as though she was holding it, and herself, together. "Lily," I began, keeping my voice calm, "we need to talk. I'm here for the baby. You know this isn't right." Her expression changed instantly, her eyes narrowing, her face twisted. "My baby!" she spat, stepping out from behind the door. "My baby, not hers. I carried him. I loved him. She doesn't deserve him. Alex and we deserve him." There was a fire in her voice, a deep anger. This wasn't just sadness or desperation. Lily was furious. Furious at the idea of losing the fantasy she had built around Alex and the baby. "Lily, Alex doesn't love you," I said gently, though my heart pounded. "This was never meant to be your baby. You know that." Her face contorted in rage, her voice rising. "He does love me. He just doesn't see it yet, but he will. Once he holds our baby, once he sees us together, he'll realize that I'm the one who's been there for him, not Kate. Me." She was shouting now, her hands shaking with anger. She stepped forward, her body blocking my path into the house. For a moment, I thought she might lash out. The tension between us was thick. I had to tread carefully. Lily wasn't just upset, she was volatile, and there was no telling what she might do next. "Lily, please," I said, trying to remain calm. "Think about what you're doing. This isn't about you and Alex. This is about the baby. You don't want to hurt him." Her expression flickered just for a moment, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. But the fury quickly returned. "Hurt him? I would never hurt him. I'm the only one who truly cares about him. Kate doesn't even want him. She's too busy with her career. I'm the one who's been there. I'm the one who's sacrificed." Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her face, but there was no softness in her breakdown, just raw anger. She was shaking, her fists clenched, and I knew I had to act fast. The baby was inside, and the longer I stood there, the more unstable she seemed. "Lily, move out of the way," I said, my voice firmer this time. "I'm taking the baby back to his parents. This ends now." For a moment, I thought she might snap. Her eyes widened, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her hands clenched at her sides, and I could see her whole body trembling with rage. She let out a low, guttural scream and lunged forward, but I stepped back quickly, keeping my distance. "No!" she shrieked, her voice full of fury. "You can't take him. Alex needs me. He doesn't love her. He loves me." You'll see. I'll show you. He'll come for me. He'll take the baby, and we'll be together." Her delusion was terrifying, so real to her that she was willing to fight for it, willing to do whatever it took to keep the baby. But I couldn't let her continue this fantasy. I stepped forward again, this time more forceful. "Lily, move out of the way," I ordered, my voice strong, cutting through her hysteria. She froze, her eyes darting between me and the house. For a split second, I thought she would attack again, but something in her broke. She stumbled back, her hands flying to her face as she sobbed uncontrollably. Her body crumpled to the floor, and she let out a wail that seemed to shake the walls. "I just wanted him to love me," she cried, her voice muffled by her hands. "I just wanted a family. Why can't I have that? Why does she get everything?" With Lily on the ground, I rushed into the house. The living room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn tight, and in the corner, I saw a small crib. It was nothing like the nursery Kate and Alex had prepared. It was a hastily put-together setup with mismatched blankets and a tiny pillow. The baby was there, swaddled in one of the blankets, sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the chaos around him. My heart surged with relief as I gently picked him up, cradling him in my arms. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. His small face was so innocent, so unaware of the nightmare he had been pulled into. I hurried out of the house, my arms tight around the baby. As I stepped outside, Lily remained where she was, still sobbing on the floor. She didn't try to stop me. She had finally collapsed under the weight of her delusion. When I arrived at Kate and Alex's home, they were waiting anxiously at the door, their faces pale and drawn. The moment they saw me step out of the car with the baby in my arms, everything changed. For a moment, they just stood there, holding their baby. The weight of everything they'd been through melting away. The room that had once felt like a monument to their loss was now filled with hope and love. I watched as they rocked him gently. Kate whispered his name through her tears. Alex's hands trembled as he stroked the baby's head, his voice breaking as he whispered, "Thank you. Thank you." The nursery, painted in the soft, serene blue, finally felt complete. The mobile above the crib spun slowly in the breeze, stars and moons dancing in the light. Everything they had dreamed of was now real, and for the first time in months, a peace settled over their home. Kate cradled her son close, her tears mixing with her laughter as she whispered his name. The house, which had once felt hollow, now seemed to breathe again. The warmth of a family filled every corner. Alex stood by her side, his arms around both of them, his eyes shining with relief and love. The quiet spaces were now filled with whispered words of love, of promises kept, and the warmth of a future they had feared they would never have. Kate found herself humming again, her voice soft and sweet, as she rocked her baby to sleep in the evening. Alex, who had once spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling in silent despair, now woke early each morning, excited to start a day that was full of possibilities. The silence that had once haunted the house was now replaced with the sounds of a new family learning to live again. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was a home. The love that had been waiting for them, quietly, all this time, had returned in full force. The shadows were gone, replaced by a warmth that would stay with them forever. Kate and Alex were finally whole. They had their son, their family. As I left their home, I couldn't help but smile. There was something so beautiful about seeing light find its way back into a place where darkness had once reigned. Kate and Alex had been through the unimaginable. But now, standing at the edge of their future with their son in their arms, they had found their way back to love, hope, and happiness, with the promise of all the memories yet to be made. And, in that moment, I knew that they would be okay. They had each other. They had their son. And after everything, that was all that mattered. In the end, Lily was sent to a facility for the help she needed. For Kate and Alex, knowing the truth didn't erase the pain, but it helped them start to heal, understanding that Lily's actions came from illness, not cruelty. Lily wasn't just a villain, she was a woman who'd lost her way. Over the years, I've learned that people aren't always what they seem. Sometimes even those who do terrible things need help. I've seen people spiral into darkness, and while it doesn't excuse their actions, it helps to understand them. It's never black and white. Kate and Alex would always carry the scars of this experience, but they had their family, and in the end, that was more than enough. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope you found the story engaging. As always, names and locations have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. If you, or someone you know, are in need of professional investigative services, please don't hesitate to visit southwalesprivateinvestigations.co.uk. We're here to help when you need us the most. And once again, thank you for your support. We truly appreciate it.